Welcome back to the Kev BK Beloved Show. We're going to get started with Dr. Beloved and NBA Team Therapy, who is my first patient. The New York Knickerbockers. Come on in. Sorry to see your season end like that. I know the wound is still fresh. I'm not here to twist the knife. I am a benevolent king. I'm not here to hurt nobody. I'm here to just have an honest conversation between me and the Knicks fans. That's all. First off, we have to have an honest conversation about Tom Thibodeau because he is the answer and the problem to everything that is wrong with the Knicks. And Flows and Delaney on Twitter put out this tweet that can summarize it a lot better than I can. And somebody titled it the 10 Tibbs Commandments. And he's a Chicago Bears beat writer, so I'm just guessing here, Flows, that you're also a Bulls fan, which is why you're so intimately familiar with Tom Thibodeau and his get down. Step 1, Tibbs changed the culture. Players embrace hard work. Step 2, players perform beyond expectation. Step 3 is stars born or brought over. Step 4, expectations form. Step 5, a deep playoff run is expected. Step 6, freak injuries. Step 7, fans defend Tibbs hard. Step 8, players aren't the same next year. Step 9, fans turn on Tibbs. Step 10, he's fired. Right now, we are at step 6, freak injuries. Because Jalen Brunson breaking his hand at halftime of Game 7, that's not a fatigue thing. That's a freak injury thing. Like, there's no amount of running and extra minutes you can put in that breaks your hand. Those type of things just happen. Although it is ironic that the guy who was putting up like 25 to 30 shots a game for your team ends up hurting his shooting hand. There is some irony in that, but that is not the reason why it happened. But I am going to list some of these injuries that the Knicks have had going into this season. This might be hard to hear, Knicks fans. And again, I'm sorry. Again, I'm not here to twist the knife. I promise I'm not. Boban Bogdanovic, injured. Julius Randle, injured. Mitchell Robinson, injured. Josh Hart, OG Anunoby tried to play 5 minutes, instantly looked like he couldn't play, came out injured. Guys, this is not a coincidence when it comes to Tom Thibodeau coach teams. He burns his teams out. He overworks his teams, and then they fall flat. The ceiling of a top Thibodeau team is the conference finals. We have 10 years of evidence of this now, unless he has somebody to balance him out like a Doc Rivers, who's able to be like, hey, Tibbs, chill out, my man. Just chill out. So I have 2 solutions for Tom Thibodeau going into the next season, one of which is much more realistic than the other. Solution 1, the Knicks go out and add a bunch more depth so he doesn't have to burn his starters out as much. And solution 2, you got to hire Tibbs a nerd. Just bring in a nerd who specializes in rest and fatigue so he can look at Tibbs and say, hey, you could play Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart 45 minutes tonight on a random Thursday in February. But according to my calculations, lifts up glasses, that might cause them to miss a Game 6 in April. Is that the game you're willing to play? Because the ceiling of your team is attached to your 5'10" point guard. Side note, Knicks fans, a lot of you owe Becky Hammond an apology. I know that's not how the internet works, but goddamn it, she deserves an apology because she was right. Your team is limited if your best player is under 6 feet tall. It just is. So the more realistic option is bring in a nerd, man. Hire a nerd. Columbia University is there. NYU. Go to one of them nerd schools. Grab one of them and just put him next to Tibbs. Him or her, they, whatever they identify as, put him next to Tibbs in a suit with a real big calculator and a MacBook and just sit him down and be like, hey, Tibbs, buddy, sit him down, please. Because I don't think Tibbs should be fired. I don't think it should get that far, especially not now. The Knicks were cultureless. In that span in between Carmelo Anthony and that first Julius Randle season where he made All-NBA, was that about a 4 or 5 year span where the Knicks thought they were getting every single free agent and didn't get a single one? The Knicks didn't have a single bit of culture. Tibbs came in and fixed that in a way that Phil fucking Jackson couldn't. So yeah, pardon me if I'm not willing to throw Tibbs out the window yet, but clearly there are some changes that need to be made. All right, outside of Tibbs, there are some pieces you're going to have to look to add in the offseason. But first, we got to take a look. We got to take a look at what the cap situation's looking like for you. Middle of the league in total tax, only spent just under $150 million. You have $21 million in cap space, so you can bring in a mid-tier, mid-level star. I like it. And more than likely, Julius Randle is going to be the centerpiece of whatever trade happens for the Knicks. He's making, goes to Google, Julius Randle has a $30 million cap hit, so add that to whatever ends up being traded. The two most popular trade targets you hear for the Knicks are Mikal Bridges and Donovan Mitchell, one of which I like significantly more than the other. Donovan Mitchell makes no sense at all because you can't have a backcourt of two guards that are under 6'2". You just can't. There's too much of a defensive liability, especially in a conference where Celtics fan bias out of it. When Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the number one team in the conference and you got to play them 4 times a year and more than likely you're going to have to go through them to get to the finals. Yeah, no, bad idea. Plus, when you look at how much Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson need the ball in their hands to be successful, not great. After playing with Luka Doncic for the first couple years of his career, I don't think Jalen Brunson is going to be that keen to bring in Donovan Mitchell in. The Bridges part, I'm 80% there with y'all. Obviously, the Villanova connection, the fit is great. He values defense, so him and Tibbs will go together beautifully. But is Mikal Bridges, you just say, insert Mikal Bridges on this team. Julius Randle was hurt. More than likely, he'll be the centerpiece of this trade. Insert Mikal Bridges on this Knicks team we just saw. Is he the difference in beating the Celtics in this conference finals and possibly winning the NBA finals as well? Or is it losing 6 in the conference finals, get swept in the finals? Is that the going all in move you want to make? If you're telling me we're getting first half of the season, just got traded to the next Mikal Bridges where he was going crazy for 28 a game, I'm with you. Bring him in. But if you're telling me we're getting the Mikal Bridges we got this past season, you might want to look to add another piece on top of that and hope for the best. Thank you for coming in. Next patient, Oklahoma City Thunder. Step 1, lock Chet Holmgren in the weight room and don't let him leave until October. He's just too light, man. He's too light. I'm sorry. I hate to be weightist, sizist, whatever it's called. Chet Holmgren he's too small. He just is. It's nice to have the athletic centers who could play on the perimeter and all that there. That's awesome. But I'm going to need you to not get bodied in the paint and allow offensive rebounds all the time by the other team. Derek Lively's good. He ain't that damn good to keep getting all his offensive boards against you. Or you can do what you should have done at the trade deadline and get some backup centers. That would be nice. Take a look at this tax bill here. You have $68 million in tax space left. Ain't no excuse for you to leave this offseason without at least another center. And also, I'm going to keep saying this, for every young team that overachieves, do not rely on your team just getting better and don't make any moves in the offseason. Don't do it. It always fails. It never works. You have to make a move in the offseason. Always. If you don't get better, you're getting worse. If anyone should know that, it should be Sam Presti and the Oklahoma City Thunder, because it just happened to them a decade ago when they made the finals and lost to Miami. You have the coach in Mark Dagnall. You have the superstar in the SGA. Your number 2 was real inconsistent with Jalen Williams, but we can chalk that one up to young nigga syndrome.
Young nigga syndrome. Noun. Definition. A condition where a young team or player performs below their usual standard in high-pressure situations due to lack of experience.
So all is not lost if you're OKC. You could look at the Kings. The Kings missed the playoffs altogether because they were like y'all, except they weren't the 1 seed. They were the 3 seed. But still, they were like y'all. Took a step a season before everyone thought they would. Now look at them. Didn't make any changes, and now their window is closed. These championship windows are never as open as you think they are. Make your move now or risk missing it. Next patient. The Cleveland Cavaliers, this one is real simple. Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen, I'd bet a large amount of money they will not be on this roster come October. Who are you bringing in? If you're building a team around Darius Garland and Evan Mobley, that's fantastic. Who else you got? As I was planning out this segment and it looked like the Timberwolves were going to lose, I had Karl Anthony Towns just kind of scribbled down in pen, because then at least you don't have 2 big men that can't score. At least you have one that can score, and Karl Anthony Towns is going to be playing a similar role that he's playing with Minnesota now, where Evan Mobley will be doing all the big man stuff in the paint, and Carl can go be a small forward because that's what he thinks he is. Timberwolves in the conference finals, I'm just going to assume that they're not going to trade Karl Anthony Towns. I feel like that's a safe assumption. With only $13 million in cap space too, that's not a lot of wiggle room to go pick up a free agent either. And Dan Gilbert's been known to penny pinch from time to time, except if LeBron's putting the clamps on him to force his hand into making some offseason moves. So best of luck with that one. That's something the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to have to figure out. But building around Darius Garland, extending Evan Mobley, and getting as much as you can for Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen is going to be the next step. I do look forward to see what the Cavaliers do because I don't think they're nearly as far away from winning as people think they are. Next patient. The Denver Nuggets. Now, before I get to the Denver Nuggets, I have a message to NBA fans, specifically NBA social media fans. Guys, we don't have to discredit everything. We don't. One of the worst things about the Skip Bayless first takeification of sports discourse is everything has turned to a GOAT debate. We feel the need to qualify everything. We feel the need to discredit every accomplishment for a player. Like, oh, see, last year's ring for the Nuggets was fake. They didn't beat a 50-win team, that whole blah, blah, blah. No, bro, they won a championship. And then they lost this year. Because that's how life works. I had a whole segment last week about how repeating at champions really hard. Only 12 teams all time have done it. The last 4 teams to have done it. The Super Warriors with Steph and KD, the Big Three Miami Heat, Kobe Gasol Lakers, Kobe Shaq Lakers. All-time great players. Every team I just named featured one of the 10 best players of all time, if not 5. And it's clear Jokic just isn't that type of player yet. And that is fine. But that doesn't make him a fraud because y'all want clicks. Jokic is fine. Him and Jamal Murray had 35 and 34 points apiece. It's okay. Teams lose. The Timberwolves are really good. There's a chance they could play in the finals and might even win it. It's fine. The flip side of that is we can calm down sometimes. Another piece of the first takeification of sports discourse is sometimes we feel like we got to just take way too big of a leap. And it can't just be Jokic is good at basketball. It has to be Jokic is the greatest offensive player I've ever seen. Jokic is already in the 15 to 20 greatest players ever. Guys, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that because I feel like that's a main cause as to why people have to jump and call him a fraud on the other side because y'all have to jump out the window and make him seem like he's the second coming of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar when you don't have to do that. You could simply say, wow, great player. Love to see him win a championship, 3 MVPs. Can't wait to see what he does because he's not even 30 yet. Okay. Now we can actually talk about the Nuggets in their offseason. So the Nuggets have negative $70 million in cap space. They have the 3rd highest tax bill in the league behind the Celtics and the Suns. But if you're the owner of the Nuggets, Stan Kroenke, how worried are you about a tax bill if you have the most exciting Nuggets team you've ever had and you're trying to keep this window as open as you can? Because if we're honest, the window first year being open was probably the bubble. But then Jamal Murray got hurt. Then he got hurt the next year. And then he got hurt the next year. And then you won. And then you lost this year. So realistically, championship windows at most are 5 years. So if we're having this conversation a year from now and you lose in the second round of playoffs, that's different. And now's not really the time to be cutting costs. And your team is built on chemistry and offensive flow. So how many roster changes can you really make? And if you're making those changes to that roster, what type of players can you realistically bring in that are going to be able to fit in the system where the center is making all the plays for the most part? Even though Jokic's usage rate isn't nearly as high as you would think it was for someone who seems like he has the ball all of the time for the Nuggets, but still. If you were looking to make a change, the obvious answer is Michael Porter Jr., who in that series against the Timberwolves was just under 11 points a game, 37% from the field, 32% from 3, 76% from the free throw line, 35 minutes a game. For 5 years, $180 million, we need better than that. Especially if you're going to give your team almost nothing on defense. Yeah, you're going to have to pick up your play a little bit. But with that size contract, unless a team is going to convince themselves, we're going to trade for Michael Porter Jr., and he is going to come in and score 10 to 15 more points a game because he's going to get more shots. Unless that's what they're going to convince themselves of, maybe. You never know. And NBA offseasons tend to get a little crazy. But the Nuggets will be the one team where I wouldn't even be mad if they go into next year and say, you know what, man, our bench was young. That's why we didn't have any depth. Let's let them get older. We still have one of the best, if not the best player in the league. Make sure Jamal Murray does yoga all summer long so he could actually play a full season. And let's just run it back. Why not? I have a grand point I want to make for team therapy before I move on to the last segment of the podcast. A big winner of the playoffs so far is trades. In season and just general trade swing. Of all 4 of the available playoff teams, all 4 of them have made a big in-season trade for an impact player that's currently on their team, or just a big swing trade in general. Pascal Siakam for the Pacers, Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington for the Mavericks, who pretty much won the series for them against the OKC Thunder, and the OKC Thunder could have easily traded for them too, but story for another day. The Boston Celtics with Derek White last year and this offseason trading for Porzingis and Drew Holiday. Timberwolves trading for Mike Conley and trading for Rudy Gobert in the offseason in what a trade we all thought was terrible, but turns out they know better than us. And then the Mavericks again traded for Kyrie Irving in another trade we all thought was terrible, but again, turns out they know better than us. So a message to all the NBA teams out there, all the GMs, take the swing. Take the swing. Swing for the fences. It's better than doing nothing. Because as you can see, every conference final team are here because they took a chance. And it seems to be working out pretty damn well.